Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to The Talking Point, the show where we bring you guys at home into the studio to discuss the biggest talking points from the beautiful game. I'm joined today by none other than Michael McCubbin. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I haven't been on The Talking Point since the pilot episode that didn't go out. So I'm making my debut today. I'm very happy about it. How about yourself?
Not too bad, mate. Buzzing to have you here. Henry, regular guest now on this. There's a second week. How are you doing?
Too right. Last week you had me on for my European knowledge. This week for my English knowledge. Got it all.
Okay, you do, my friend, you do. Now, of course, we've also got George here as well, a Tottenham fan, as we are going to be talking about the Spurs. How are you doing?
The Spurs.
I'm very good, thank you. Ready to talk all things Spurs, Conte, whatever you want.
Amazing. Now, we had George on the pilot as well, and we were discussing about Conte, and I was trying to get a negative opinion out of him. However, they'd only lost one game at that point. Whereas now, might be a little bit easier to do because things have started going a little bit downhill with Antonio Conte at Spurs. That being said, it's still Spurs' best start in 59 years. They are only 3 points behind Manchester City in third. But again, I have to raise this point. I don't think they look that good with the eye test. They fielded a weak side against Bournemouth because Conte was supposedly trying to prove a point, and they just about managed to get a result from it. So, George, my question to you, talking point 1 year on from Antonio Conte signing, what do you think he's improved?
I think the mentality is definitely the biggest thing that I think he's improved in some of the players. And I'll tell you what as well, I think he's managed to coach some of the average players to be probably better than they're definitely better than they have been before. So, for example, the likes of maybe Davis, Dyer, players that have been around for a long while now. There was when it was Mourinho, and even towards the end of the match, there was a lot of question marks around these guys as to whether they're good enough. A lot of us fans were calling for them to be sold, to be honest with you. And as soon as Conte's come in, I think he's coached them to be a lot stronger, a lot better mentally, and I think our defence has definitely improved because of that. However, saying that though, I do think we do still need to take these sort of players to the next level and maybe bring in some new ones. But no, I definitely think he's improved some of the more average players and definitely installed a better mentality to be able to see out wins. Because there's been plenty of times in the past where we've been leading games and we've thrown them towards the end, and we seem to be doing that a lot less now.
Yeah, indeed. That is definitely a point he's made. Do you kind of agree, Mikey? Do you think like he's improved that side of it, Spurs?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the thing is, in many ways, it wasn't really hard to improve what Spurs were at the time, right? You know, the late Mourinho days were pretty chaotic. Obviously, Nuno was a disaster, wasn't he? So I don't think it would have taken one of the best managers in the world to improve that Spurs side over 12 months, especially given the resources that they've put into the squad over the last year. But having said that, Conte is still one of the best managers in the world. So yeah, I would agree. I was going to ask though, improvements aside, there's obviously still areas of the squad that are underperforming, George. Where are you most concerned about right now?
100%, I think the right wing back spot.
Yeah.
There's no denying that. Conte's teams, it's all about the wing backs, and that's where the creativity comes from. And there's no denying that the likes of Emerson and Doherty have not been up to par. Let's just put it that way. I think it's a real problem because even if you look at the Bournemouth game, I know we fielded a bit of a weaker team to begin with, but there was a lot of chances in that first half where we were getting the ball on that right-hand side and it was falling to either Skip or Emerson, and neither of them could really be that creative spark and cross the ball in. And it's happening game in, game out, especially from the wing-back's perspective. And it's taken the likes of Perisic, who, to be honest with you, he's not necessarily been to the heights that I thought he would be yet, but he's still, you're seeing his crossing from the left-hand side. And the fact he's got the most assists in the team just goes to show the sort of level we need in those sort of positions. And Emerson just has not been cutting it, and that's definitely, I'd say, the biggest area we need to improve on.
So that personally, he's something that I wanted to touch upon because obviously Conte moans about wanting a bigger squad. He has Doherty on the bench. There have been periods when Doherty has actually been very good for Spurs at right wing back.
Yeah.
Do you think criticism has to go to Conte there, where, as you said, he's playing him week in, week out, he's then moaning about him, and they're not really doing anything to change it? He's also got Jed Spence as well. We've barely seen him. Do you think that's kind of at Conte's feet?
No, I definitely agree that some of it has to falter him because his previous comments on Spence have been like, it's a massive step up from the Championship to the Premier League. He's not ready, this, that, and the other. But I'm not being funny. He faced Bournemouth last year. Like, it's the sort of team that you could have easily brought him into. I know they lost when they played last year, but it was only 1-0, and it's obviously he's done well throughout the season. So I definitely would have liked to have seen him have a chance in this sort of game. And then on Doherty, I think, to be honest, the beginning of the season, it was just unfortunate. Obviously, he had that big injury towards the end of last season, so he just wasn't really available. And I think he was just slowly sort of catching up to speed and getting back up to getting back into the team, which he did do well a couple of weeks ago in the Champions League. So, yeah, I mean, he should be ahead of Emerson, but right now I think Conte just puts too much trust in Royale, and it's providing the same results every single game. He's not been able to cross the ball well. He was arguably at fault for Bournemouth's second goal because he wasn't clearing the ball very well. He stuck his foot up when it was just such an easy header for Moore. So, yeah, I think he's definitely stubborn with his choices. But we've known that from before with Chelsea.
Yeah, for sure.
George, just wondering, do you struggle with the lack of sort of variation in some of Tottenham's play at the moment? Because we're really seeing them struggle to get the ball into the final third. You've highlighted the issue with the wing-backs here, that they maybe don't have the technical ability, Perisic aside, to find the strikers in the box. If you're looking at the kind of almost rigid central midfield pair of Bentancur and Højbjerg, don't get me wrong, they're both good passers of the balls, but they're not like elite creative players in that regard. You still haven't got that kind of guy that can slot in the middle. And we've seen Kulusevski be injured recently and the team really struggled to create chances. Son, you could say, maybe hasn't been at the right level this year. Charlison's had his injury issues, hasn't had loads of starts either. Do you worry at the lack of diversity in the tactics for Spurs? Because what Conte said is when they come up against a good team, that's when they're really being undone. Like they didn't really have an answer to United in that defeat at Old Trafford, and it's okay against the smaller teams where they can grind out results, but really a team with the quality you have going forward, Harry Kane back to sort of his imperious best, scoring wise, you should be creating more chances. You shouldn't be one of the top 5 teams for time spent not in the attacking third. You've got like Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest. These are the other teams that are spending less time in the opposition sort of final third than they are. Yeah, exactly. So what's your take on sort of the lack of kind of choice in Conte's tactics for the team going forward?
Yeah, I think for myself, there's 2 parts to it. I think for one, throughout the whole summer, I was screaming for the likes of James Maddison to come into the team because we've still yet to replace Eriksen. We don't have that, like you said, the creative player in that midfield to sort of really unlock the real passes through the defence to play it to Kane and Son. Because at the moment, we've seen a bit, especially in that Bournemouth game, Kane again was having to drop a little bit deep to actually become the creator, but Kane's the one you want on the end of those crosses as well, especially considering that Son hasn't been firing the way he was last year. So I definitely do think we're sort of missing that creative midfielder element within our squad. But then saying that, I do think a lot of the issues that we're facing has become because of the Kulusevski injury. For me, he is at the moment he is that creative source in our side. But he's not doing it centrally from midfield. He's doing it as a right winger. So if we just take like game by game, we scored 4 in the first game against Southampton, I believe, when he was playing. He played the first 3 games. We scored in a few of those, came back against Chelsea. But then he was dropped because Richarlison scored 2 in the Champions League, so we wanted to give him a chance. And in those 3 games that he was dropped from the first team, we really struggled, and he had to be brought on, and he changed the game again in those, and got the results again. And then obviously the injury happened, and we're sort of seeing the same things. There's just no creativity from that side of the field. The Leicester game, for example, when he did play, when he did come on in that match, and we ended up scoring 6 goals, that peach of a ball that he put to Kane at the back post is exactly what we're missing in the squad. So I think not having him in the team has been really detrimental to us, and we sort of, I guess you can say, need more squad depth to cover him for when he's not fit.
Okay, well, let's move on to another point that I kind of want to ask you. Obviously, as I mentioned, it's been over a year now since Conte's signed for Spurs. Do you feel like Spurs are closer to winning a trophy? When we did this before, I kind of asked you, what would you prefer, the Champions League or a League Cup? I mean, you can answer that. And then I also saw within your tweets recently, I think this was during the Bournemouth game, where there's no defending this. Obviously talking about Conte, and I've got a few Spurs mates, they were saying stuff like Conte out. It very much changed when the score was 3-2. But yeah, do you feel like Spurs are closer to a trophy? Do you feel like you'd prefer Champions League to a League Cup? Yeah, how's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that tweet specifically was obviously, it was targeted more sort of like at the players, just how poor some of those options were coming off the bench, like the Sanchez, the Royals, and well, specifically Royale saying that we have other options. Why is he not playing? There's a bit more frustration in that. And with that first point about the Champions League or League Cup, I'm sticking by my point. I'm saying I'd rather be in the top 4 Champions League than the League Cup. I think if you offer me the FA Cup instead, 100% I'll take that. But there's two ways of looking at it. One, obviously, you could say the beggars can't be choosers. And Spurs just need a trophy.
For sure.
To a degree, like I understand that for sure. But with the League Cup, with it being over and done with by March, I think what will happen is people will just always move the level. They'll always move the bar, the expectations. So if we finally do win the League Cup, let's say this year, it's a trophy. Great, Spurs won a trophy. But then as soon as it comes to the end of the season, if we then say bottom top 4, it's all just going to be, it's only the League Cup. They weren't good enough for the Champions League. Is this all false? Like, the bar is always moved. It's just the way it is with rival fans.
For sure.
And myself personally, I just always want to see my club in the Champions League.
Yeah.
And the only way I'd trade that up is if it was for maybe a higher level trophy like the FA Cup and so on and so forth. So that's my reasoning.
I think that puts us onto a good point, Henry. I'll ask you this and then I'll come to you, George, to kind of wrap this up. Would you give Antonio a new contract right now? Obviously, his deal is ending at the end of this season. Spurs' progression, is definitely better than where it was with Nuno, but is it going to continue? Conte has never stayed at a club longer than 3 seasons. What would you do?
My worry is he initially didn't want the job, did he? And then he got tempted in by Paratici 5 months later. And there have been moments where he's looked exasperated, as you've mentioned after this Bournemouth game. We were joking beforehand, that game against Mura in the, whatever it was, Conference League last season. I think, and it's such a tall order for Tottenham to take down sort of cities at the moment in terms of difference in class, and I think you're hearing him moan about that kind of stuff more. So my worry is that you want a manager that is completely committed to the project, and I don't get that from Conte all the time. I think, as you said, he's a great manager doing a good job. He's at an unbelievable club facilities-wise, stadium, etc. So really, he's got everything he could desire in most senses. But I just worry that he's got his eyes on a different European job, in all honesty, and so. I would give him a 12 months extension because I do think that 3 years is an appropriate amount of time to really judge the progress of a manager. But I would be very wary about handing him a contract where if you had to let him go, if the atmosphere got really toxic, if it looked like he was pushing for a move, then you'd have to pay him out in a big way, because we've seen how stubborn he can be in terms of holding Chelsea to ransom for his entire kind of deal. He's a man of honour. I think that's a lot of Italian coaches are like that. Spalletti was like that with when he was fired by Inter Milan as well. So Zenit St. Petersburg. So I would be wary about handing him too long of a deal. But I do think, as we said, this has been their best start for as many years. Yes, the football isn't being great, but I think given another transfer window, maybe another summer transfer window, I'd love to see what he could really do with that side. But not too long of a deal in my opinion. But George, I wonder what your opinion is as an actual Spurs fan.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I agree with most of that. I think, as far as I'm aware, from like the sort of Spurs journalists and the people that know, I think we do have a 12-month option on him as well. So maybe I would consider triggering, like you said, triggering that instead of giving him a full 5-year contract or whatever it may be. But I think we'll know a lot better after the World Cup and the January transfer window, because I think the problem is, right, Conte wants reassurances from the club that he's going to get the players he wants. But then equally, the club might not necessarily want to give him those players if they don't think Conte's going to stick around. So it's a bit of a catch-22 situation. So maybe come the January transfer window, if we are showing intent and we are signing maybe another centre-back, another right wing-back, another attacking midfielder, whatever it may be, if we are bringing in those players that Conte wants, then I think you'll put pen to paper for a longer deal. But I do sort of agree that it can't be too long, because it's football nowadays, everything just goes up in flames so quickly.
Very true. Very true.
It could be quite disastrous. So no, I would like to see him get a longer contract, but nothing too long, like you said.
I love it, George. Thank you so much. That has been the talking point. If you guys at home want to talk and discuss about Antonio Conte and his Spurs side, get in the comments below. George's social media and everything will also be in the description. Go over there and check him out. I'm so interested to see what could be, because this could be going live after Spurs are either through to the next stage or knocked out of the Champions League. Now, make sure you guys are subscribed to Football Daily, like this video, and we'll catch you later on.